The lunch rush at Millie's diner was in full swing. The bell above the door jingled as a guy in his early 30s walked in, brushing rain off his coat. Jack Anderson scanned the place, his sharp eyes taking in the checkered floors and faded red booths. The warm, bustling vibe was a total change from the quiet, fancy restaurants he usually went to. Adjusting his tie, he hesitated a bit before sliding into a corner booth behind the counter. Emma Collins was juggling orders like a pro. Her friendly smile and quick jokes kept customers coming back, even though she looked worn out. When she spotted Jack, she grabbed a menu and headed over. "Welcome to Millie's," she said cheerfully. "What can I get you?" Jack glanced at the menu but looked a bit uncomfortable. "Just a water, please." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Just water? Not even a slice of pie to go with it?" He hesitated, then sighed. "I lost my wallet. Today is just not my lucky day." Emma studied him for a moment. His suit looked neat, but his shoes were scuffed, and his tie was a bit crooked. He seemed more worn out than anything else. With a shrug and a smile, she said, "Don't worry about it. Lunch is on me today." Jack blinked, surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I can. Everyone has bad days," she interrupted, waving off his protests. "Besides, it's just a sandwich. The world could use a little more kindness, right?" For a moment, Jack just stared at her. In his world, nothing came without strings attached. Yet here was this waitress offering him a meal with no expectations. "Well," he said slowly, "thank you. I'll have the turkey club then." As Emma walked back to put in his order, Jack leaned back in his seat, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through him. Minutes later, she came back with his sandwich and a glass of water. "Here you go. Enjoy." "Thanks," he said, glancing at her name tag. "Emma, right?" "That's me," she replied, heading off to the next table. Jack's thoughts drifted. He'd come to this diner on a whim, hoping for a moment of normalcy in a life that often felt anything but. He found himself watching Emma as she moved between tables, her smile unwavering despite the demands of the job. When he finished, he stood up and walked to the counter. Emma was ringing up another customer but turned to him as he approached. "That was great," he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I owe you one." Emma smiled. "Just come back when you're having a better day." He chuckled softly. "I might just do that." As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. Glancing back at her, she was already wiping down a table, her ponytail swinging as she moved. Something about her felt different. "She's different," Jack muttered to himself as he pushed the door open and stepped into the rain. Walking down the street, the hum of the diner faded behind him, but Emma's kindness stuck with him. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt a flicker of hope. The next day, the bell above the diner door jingled again, and Emma looked up from the counter. There he was, the same guy from yesterday, this time without the rain-soaked coat. Jack Anderson walked in with a hesitant smile and slid into the same booth. "Back so soon?" Emma teased as she approached. "Well," Jack said, running a hand through his neatly combed hair, "you did say to come back on a better day." But he shifted uncomfortably. "I might still owe you one." "Wallet trouble again." Emma crossed her arms, pretending to think. "I don't know. You're starting to sound like a professional freeloader." Jack laughed, surprising himself. "Guilty as charged," she grinned. "Okay, but only because I don't want my turkey club to go to waste." From that day on, Jack became a regular, showing up at least twice a week. He'd walk into Millie's diner, always ordering the same thing, a turkey club and water. Each time, he'd offer a sheepish excuse about his wallet, and each time Emma would wave him off with a smile. During quiet moments, Jack watched Emma flit between tables. Always smiling, always kind. He began to notice little things, like how she slipped an extra slice of pie to the elderly couple in the corner, or how she knew every regular's name and favorite order. He even caught the quiet sighs she let out when she thought no one was looking. One afternoon, he lingered longer than usual, waiting for the lunch rush to die down. When Emma finally took a breather, she slid into the booth across from him, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're not in a hurry today," she remarked. "Not really," Jack admitted. "Busy day for you," she shrugged. "Every day's busy. Bills don't pay themselves, you know." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Bills?" Emma hesitated, but something about Jack's easygoing vibe made her feel comfortable. "My dad passed a few years ago, left some debts behind, and my little brother's in college. Smart kid, studying to be a teacher. Someone's got to keep things afloat." Jack leaned back, genuinely impressed. "That's a lot to handle." "It's life," Emma said with a small smile. "You do what you have to." Jack left the diner that day with a whole new appreciation for Emma. Emma's kindness was more than just a nice thing about her. It ran deep, shaped by tough times and her strength. Jack thought about everyone in his life, business partners, socialites, acquaintances, all caught up in their wealth and appearances. Emma was like a breath of fresh air, but he also felt a twinge of guilt. He was hiding part of himself, scared that if she found out he was wealthy, it would change how she saw him. One slow afternoon, as Emma cleared his table, she paused with a teasing smile and said, "You're lucky to have such a generous waitress. One day you'll have to repay the favor." Jack laughed, but her words hit home. What could he possibly do to repay her kindness? As he watched her walk away, wiping down another table, a thought popped into his head. What would Emma think if she knew the truth? He pushed it away, but it stuck with him long after he left the diner. Jack had become a regular at the diner, showing up earlier and staying longer each time. He wasn't just there for the turkey club anymore. He was there for Emma, whose warmth lit up the whole place. One afternoon, during a slow lunch rush, Emma took a rare break and sat with Jack. She sipped her coffee, her apron a bit wrinkled, but her smile still bright. "You know," Jack said, leaning back, "you're always running around taking care of everyone else. What do you do for yourself?" Emma blinked, a little surprised. "For myself? Well, between shifts here, paying bills and checking on my brother, not much time left for me." Jack tilted his head, curious. "There's got to be something. A hobby? A dream?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "I like to paint. Haven't had much time for it lately, but I've always dreamed of opening a little art studio someday. Nothing fancy, just a place for people to come and create." Jack's interest was piqued. "That sounds amazing. Why haven't you gone for it?" Emma sighed, swirling her coffee. "Dreams don't pay the bills, Jack. Who has the money for that?" He wanted to say, "I do," and that he could make her dream happen with a snap of his fingers. But instead, he just said, "Maybe someday." "Maybe," Emma replied with a wistful smile. Over the next few weeks, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Emma. Her optimism, even when times were tough, was something he admired. The way she talked about her dreams, her family, her customers, it all drew him in like nothing else ever had. But as their connection deepened, so did his guilt. He was keeping a huge part of himself hidden, and the longer he waited to tell her, the harder it would be. One evening, as Jack was leaving the diner, he overheard Emma chatting with another waitress about the diner's leaky roof. "Molly's been trying to get it fixed for months," Emma said, "but repairs like that cost a fortune." That night, Jack made a few calls. By the end of the week, a repair crew had come in and fixed the roof. No one the wiser. The next time Jack walked into the diner, he found Emma in a great mood. "You won't believe it," she said, beaming as she came over to his booth. "Someone fixed the roof." Jack pretended to be surprised. "Really? That's awesome." "Molly didn't hire anyone, so it must have been one of the regulars. Whoever it was, they saved us." Jack smiled but felt a pang of guilt. He wanted to tell her it was him, but he worried she'd see it as manipulating her instead of a kind gesture. One sunny afternoon, Emma slid into Jack's booth during another slow shift. "You're here a lot," she joked. "Do you even work?" Jack laughed nervously. "Of course. Everyone's got to work, right?" "What do you do?" she asked casually. Jack hesitated, then gave his usual vague answer. "I'm in business." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Business, huh? That's pretty mysterious." "It's not that exciting," Jack said quickly, changing the subject back to her art. "Speaking of exciting, have you painted anything lately?" Emma narrowed her eyes playfully but let it slide. "Not since last week, but maybe I'll find time soon." As she walked away to serve another table, Jack let out a quiet sigh of relief. But Emma's lingering glance showed she was still curious about him. That evening, as Jack left the diner, he couldn't shake the feeling that Emma deserved to hear the truth. But the thought of how she might react, the potential betrayal she could feel, kept him quiet. For her part, Emma watched him go, her curiosity about the mysterious man growing. Something about Jack didn't add up, and she couldn't help but wonder, who is he really? The morning sunlight streamed through the diner's windows, casting a warm glow over the usual buzz of customers. Jack was chilling in his usual booth, sipping coffee and waiting for Emma to take her break. He had gotten used to these moments, really craving the easy vibe they had together. As Emma walked by with the tray of plates, she nodded at him. "Be with you in a minute, Jack," she said. Jack gave a faint smile, feeling the weight of something he hadn't said hanging over him for weeks. Then a new customer sat at the counter, chatting away with the waitress, and Jack was scrolling through his phone, not paying much attention. That was until he heard someone mention his name. His real name? "Jack Anderson," the guy said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "You're the tech genius who started Horizon Systems, right? What are you doing in a place like this?" Jack froze, his coffee cup paused midair. Emma, who was clearing a nearby table, turned sharply at the sound of his name. The guy kept talking, totally oblivious to the tension in the air. "I've read all about you. You're a self-made millionaire. You've been on magazine covers. My brother works at one of your companies." Jack forced a tight smile, trying to brush off the recognition. "I like to keep a low profile," he said, glancing nervously at Emma, who stood there frozen, her tray gripped tightly in her hands. Her expression shifted from confusion to realization, and then to hurt as the customer walked away. Emma marched over to Jack's booth, her voice low but shaking with anger. "So," she started, eyes narrowing, "all this time you've been lying to me?" Jack looked up, guilt flashing across his face. "Emma, let me explain." "You're a millionaire," she interrupted, "a tech mogul, and you've been sitting here letting me pay for your lunches, pretending to be just some regular guy." "I wasn't pretending," Jack said, his voice calm but strained. "I just didn't tell you." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "Didn't tell me, Jack. I've been bending over backwards to help you, thinking you couldn't even afford a sandwich, and you're sitting on a fortune. Why? Why?" Jack stood up, trying to meet her gaze. "Because I wanted to know if someone could care about me for who I am, not what I have. My whole life, people have only seen the money, not me." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed firm. "And you thought it was okay to use my kindness as a test to see if I was worthy. Do you even realize how humiliating that is?" Jack took a step closer, pleading. "It wasn't about testing you, Emma. I didn't plan this. I didn't want to lose what we had." Emma shook her head, her voice breaking. "What we had, Jack? You built this on a lie. How can I believe anything you've said was real?" She turned and stormed out of the diner, leaving Jack standing there, his chest tightening as the bell above the door jingled behind her. Emma drove home, gripping the steering wheel tight as tears streamed down her face. She replayed their conversations in her mind, all the laughs and connections now tainted by this revelation. Had it all been a game to him? She had put so much of herself into their friendship, believing Jack was just a regular guy needing a break. Now she felt foolish and used. That evening, Emma sat in her tiny apartment, staring at a blank canvas she had planned to paint on. The joy she usually found in her art felt far away, overshadowed by the sting of betrayal. Meanwhile, back in his penthouse, Jack stared out at the city skyline, his reflection in the glass reminding him of the man he didn't want to be. He replayed Emma's words, each one cutting deeper than the last. She was right. He had turned her kindness into a test, even if he hadn't meant to. He thought he could protect himself by hiding the truth. But instead, he had hurt the one person who saw him for more than his wealth. Jack picked up his phone, hesitating before dialing Emma's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. "Emma," he said quietly, "please just let me explain. I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you." He hung up, knowing it wasn't enough. Words wouldn't fix this. Days went by and Emma didn't return his calls. At the diner, her co-workers told him she had taken some time off. Jack sat in his usual booth, staring at the empty seat across from him. The turkey club he'd ordered sat untouched. He had to find a way to make things right. But as the days dragged on, doubt crept in. What if he'd lost her for good? Jack stared at the piles of papers on his desk, but his mind was elsewhere. Emma's face, her hurt, and her words haunted him. He knew he couldn't just leave things like this. She had given him something no one else ever had, genuine care, untainted by his wealth. That evening, Jack made a series of calls. First, he contacted a financial advisor to pay off Emma's late father's debts. He didn't want her burdened by something she shouldn't have to deal with alone. Next, he reached out to a foundation he'd quietly supported for years, setting up a scholarship for Emma's younger brother. He made sure the paperwork reflected the brother's hard work and merit, keeping his own involvement under wraps. But it still didn't feel like enough. Jack wanted Emma to know he believed in her dreams too. He remembered her talking about painting during one of their dinners and how she brushed it off as impractical. So he decided to gather the best art supplies he could find. Emma was totally surprised when she got a delivery at the diner, a big box filled with brushes, canvases, and paints, along with a handwritten note. It said something like, "Emma, your kindness inspired me in ways I can never repay. Use these to follow your dreams. You deserve every success. A grateful friend." She read it twice, her heart racing. Right away, she thought of Jack, but that thought stirred up a mix of emotions. When Emma got home that night, she found a letter from the bank saying her family's debts were cleared. Later, her brother called, his voice shaky with excitement as he told her about a scholarship he just got. Sitting on her bed with the art supplies and the letter, Emma realized Jack had done all this not to win her over, but to help her and her family without expecting anything back. The anger she held on to started to fade, replaced by gratitude and a hint of longing. A week later, she got an invitation in the mail. It was fancy and said there was going to be a celebration at an art gallery in the city. Emma felt a tug of curiosity and hesitation, but ultimately decided to go. When she arrived, she was blown away. Her paintings were all over the walls. Work she'd sketched and tucked away at the diner, never dreaming they'd be displayed like this. The room was packed with people she knew, her brother, co-workers, regulars from the diner, and even some neighbors she hadn't seen in ages. And there was Jack standing in the middle, looking nervous but determined. When Emma walked up to him, Jack's breath caught. She looked beautiful but guarded, her eyes searching his. "I didn't expect this," she said softly, waving her hand around at the gallery. Jack stepped closer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I wanted to show you how extraordinary you are, Emma. You've been so busy giving to everyone else that you've forgotten what you deserve. I see it, and I believe in you. Emma took a look around at the paintings, the familiar faces, and then back at Jack. I'm sorry for hiding the truth, Jack said. I should have trusted you from the start. But everything I feel for you, every moment we've shared, it's all real. Please let me make this right. Emma's voice wavered. It's not about the money, Jack. It's about trust. You tested me without my consent, and that hurt. Jack nodded. I know, and I'll spend every day proving to you that I'll never make that mistake again. Emma managed a small smile, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You're good at grand gestures, Jack, but earning my trust again won't happen overnight. I'm not going anywhere, Jack replied earnestly as the gallery buzzed around them. Emma looked up at him, her expression softening. I forgive you, she said, but don't think this means it'll be easy. You've got work to do. Jack smiled, relief washing over him. Fair enough. As they stood there, a quiet understanding passed between them. For now, that was enough. The months that followed were all about slowly rebuilding trust. Jack never pushed Emma for forgiveness. Instead, he showed her with his actions just how much he respected and cared for her. He helped out in little ways, taking her to art supply stores, scouting locations for a potential studio, and even encouraging her to apply for a grant from a local art council. At first, Emma was hesitant, but gradually, she started to let her guard down. Jack's humility and patience won her over bit by bit, and she began to see how sincere he really was. One evening, while they were painting together in her makeshift home studio, she turned to him with a grin. You're not bad at this, she teased, pointing at his awkward brushstrokes. Jack laughed. If this doesn't work out, maybe you can hire me as your assistant. Emma's smile softened. I think we make a pretty good team. Months later, after tons of preparation, Emma's dream finally became a reality. The art studio, a cozy, inviting space filled with bright colors and natural light, opened its doors to the community. Jack stood by Emma's side as she welcomed guests, proud and happy for her. Her joy was contagious. The whole event was a celebration of her talent and resilience, with friends, family, and even regulars from the diner showing up to support her. As the night started winding down and the last guests were getting ready to leave, Jack asked Emma to stick around for a moment. What's this about? She asked, curious but amused. Jack took her hand and led her to the center of the studio, where one of her paintings was hanging. In front of it was a little table with a custom-painted wooden box. Jack picked up the box, looking serious and full of emotion. Emma, he started. When I met you, I was lost in a world that felt shallow and meaningless. You showed me kindness I didn't deserve and a love I never thought I'd find. He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring, and the lid was painted with one of Emma's designs, a sunrise over a quiet lake, symbolizing new beginnings. You've given me more than I ever thought possible, Jack continued. Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you? Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, a big smile breaking across her face. Yes, but this time lunch is on me forever. A few months later, they had their wedding in the art studio that had become a symbol of their journey together. The room was filled with laughter, love, and a mix of simplicity and elegance that reflected both Emma's humility and Jack's devotion. The diner staff mingled with Jack's high-profile business associates, showing how their worlds had blended in such a unique way. As Emma and Jack shared their first dance, the soft glow of the studio lights surrounded them. Emma leaned in and whispered, You taught me that true wealth isn't about money, It's about kindness and love." Jack smiled, his voice warm and full of affection. "And you showed me what it means to truly be seen." As the music played, Jack spun Emma around, their laughter filling the room. The people who mattered most were there to celebrate not just their love story, but all the lessons it carried. That true connection goes beyond wealth, and kindness can really change lives. The sunrise over the lake painting hung prominently in the studio, accompanied by a small plaque that read, "Inspire and be inspired," dedicated to the power of kindness. Thanks for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, kindness, and second chances. Emma and Jack's story reminds us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the connections we make and the kindness we show to others. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more soul-stirring stories that will warm your heart and brighten your day. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story about the power of love, compassion, and the beauty of human connection. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.